Hi, everyone, and welcome to this LinkedIn Live event. My name is Jeremy Ventura, Field CISO here at Myriad 360, and thank you for joining today's webinar on one of the most critical developments in cybersecurity over the last couple of years, Secure Access Service Edge, or better known as SASE, as you'll hear that term, an acronym, with our industry guests today. As organizations really continue to evolve and embrace digital transformation with more remote and hybrid workers, cloud-based applications, and even distributed systems, the traditional approaches of how to secure the network and connectivity simply just aren't cutting it anymore. SASE really represents what we call a fundamental shift in how we secure and connect users to the applications and data that they need, no matter where they may be accessing this from the world. It can really converge networking and security services into a single cloud native architecture that promises really to make our IT environment more secure, agile, and scalable. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to be exploring what SASE is, why it's essential for businesses today, how it can help you reduce complexity and improve performance, and really enhance your security posture. We're fortunate to have two industry experts with us today to guide us through this topic. Please join me in welcoming our guests. First, I'd like to introduce Tom Wilkins, who brings extensive experience in cybersecurity strategy implementation from Palo Alto Networks, and also Jeremy Manuel, a leading voice in Myriad 360 here at Network Transformation and also Cloud Security Solutions. These gentlemen are both going to be diving into what the key components of SASE are, their real-world insights and use cases, and help answering your questions along the way. But before we get started, just a little housekeeping items. We are on LinkedIn Live, so please feel free to ask questions, and we will be answering them live for you. So, gentlemen, let's get this started. Tom, I first want to start with you, if you don't mind giving the audience just a quick, brief introduction of who you are and who Palo Alto Networks is.
Sure. So I've been at Palo Alto Networks for 5 years now. I've always been in the SASE team, and I really love the way we built our SASE platform. 5 years ago, it was a global protect connecting into the cloud, and today it's transformed into the leading SASE solution. So, we talk about what is SASE. SASE is something different to everybody, right? Our SASE, if we look at it, is it was created by Gartner back in 2019, the term, but it can be defined as many different things. We define it as combining network security, as Jeremy said, and applications. We have SD-WAN, we have ADEM, which is autonomous digital experience. We have DLP, we have CASB as well, and they can all be managed from a single console for the customers.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tom. And Jeremy, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you don't mind giving the audience a quick introduction of who you are, who Myriad 360 is, and what does SASE mean for you?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Hello, everyone. My name is also Jeremy, and I'm a Cybersecurity Solutions Architect here at Myriad 360. And so Myriad 360, we're a global advisor and systems integrator for many of the world's largest brands that you see. We're a go-to partner for complex and comprehensive solutions with that 360-degree spin. And we're really just the trusted people that you can go to kind of talk about your network, how you can implement different solutions, and help to ensure that your network is secure with products like Prisma Access. And so, you mentioned what is SASE, and it's different for everyone. So for me, SASE is kind of the concept in network architecture that combines security with your wide area networking capabilities into a single unified cloud native, hopefully, solution. And a lot of the time, the underlying principles of SASE are the same, but I think it's a little different for each organization, but typically has some combination of the components of, SD-WAN, a ZTNA client of some sort, a secure web gateway, maybe CASB, or an enterprise browser, and then typically, some firewalling as a service. But again, I think it's really important to stress that it's different for everyone, and depending on your needs, SASE is really just that unified security and access to applications.
Perfect. No, thank you both for explaining kind of what SASE means for you. As you both know, kind of how I started the presentation was SASE really can mean different things for different individuals, different organizations, depending on industry and compliance, depending on what's actually within their environment. So it's really good to start to dissolve and really dissect what does actually SASE mean. With that being said, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you first. Within Palo Alto Networks, right, you do have a platform called and a product called Prisma Access. And there are different components that make up what Prisma Access is. Do you mind going at a high level? What are the different components?
Sure. So Prisma Access, we look is the ability to connect mobile users, remote networks, and also data centers into our Prisma Access Cloud. So if we look at the mobile side, we use Global Protect as our agent, is one method of connectivity. The other method is our explicit proxy. We can work with pack files, whether someone's coming off another vendor with pack files, we can integrate that easily into Prisma Access. And the other one is method for mobile users is a SSL connection, clientless VPN into the environment. We also can look for remote sites, right? So if a customers have 10, 100, 50 different remote sites, we could connect that into Prisma Access with a simple IPsec tunnel. And then that remote site would have access to everything in the environment that we set up for Prisma Access. Lastly is the data centers. We look at the data center connectivity. That's what we call as a service connection, which would serve up the different resources at a data center for the remote users or a mobile user. There's other aspects of this, if we get deeper, the SaaS applications and autonomous digital experience as well. But that's the key components for the SASE architecture.
Perfect. No, that makes a lot of sense. Jeremy, question for you. So what are all the different connection method endpoints?
Yeah, so there's a lot of them around the world. And so Prisma Access actually separates them into access locations and compute locations. Mm-hmm. And so we actually have a diagram that shows a lot of these locations across the globe. So you can connect to any of these points of presence from a mobile user using your already installed Global Protect client if you're moving from Palo Alto firewalls, and jump into any of these mobile user connection points. From there, it's only going to be a maximum, depending on how you set up your service connections, up to 4 hops to get to any of your locations around the world. Right. So if you had a service connection in Japan and you had your mobile users accessing from one of those access locations, you'd be able to use the Prisma Access backbone to, in a very quick manner, get to those resources. So a lot of options, a lot of flexibility of where you can access in. I think one thing to stress on those key components that Tom brought up a little bit is that, we have explicit proxy, we have, the use of pack files, we have the Global Protect client, we have just a ton of different ways of connecting you into the network. And then on the other side, we have remote network locations, right, for your remote sites. We have service connections for your data centers. And we even have ZTNA connectors for your applications, which we'll get into a little bit later.
And just one point, Jeremy, sorry to jump in, but we show the different slides, the different points of presence around the world. And the key thing is that we are sitting on global or AWS and I'm drawing a blank. So, but we sit at the lowest level of these providers, Google, right? GCP. We're sitting at the lowest level. So we're not a commodity for these other vendors. We're at the same level that Google uses. So that's how we can get the speed and the connectivity from the 110 different points of presence around the world.
That's a great point, Tom. And even to add on to that, if you sit in one of those data centers where Prisma Access is, you can actually do a direct interconnect into the backbone. So, we can handle pretty much a network of any size, of any speed, and almost any scenario.
Perfect. Now, Jeremy, you also kind of mentioned something. There's also policies and security standards as well, right? That are kind of made to access the SASE apps.
Correct. So you can apply the same security policies that you're probably very used to from your next generation firewalls, but across everything, whether it's mobile users or remote network locations or anyone accessing any applications. You get the same level of granularity, the same easy ability to kind of have that one unified pane of glass. And this is for both SaaS applications, internal resources, anything that you're accessing. So I think that's a very important part to call out on Prisma Access, that, the way that you interact with the service is very straightforward. It's kind of how you're probably used to managing some of your on-premise firewalls at times.
Perfect. Tom, you actually kind of highlighted a little bit just a couple of minutes ago. You started talking about AWS and Azure, GCP. What happens if the customer has different applications across these different cloud environments? How can they access them still?
So that's a great question. We have a product called a ZTNA connector, Zero Trust Network Access Connector. And that connector will give the customer the ability to connect into these apps. Maybe they have 2 apps in AWS and 2 apps in GCP or 5 or 10. The applications will be accessible through the ZTNA connector. And it's really an easy, it's a 5 to 10 minute setup, right? So it's a VM that we spin up. The VM automatically goes out and connects to our Prisma Access, and then we have ability to see these applications. So the end user on the left, the remote user or remote sites, will just be able to connect into these applications within a 5 to 10 minute setup time. We see this as the ability to also, if we do, customers are doing M&A, right? So when you do mergers and acquisitions, you're coming into an environment that you're not really sure of what you're purchasing or buying, and there might be multiple or duplicate IP schemes. The ZTNA connector will fix that, with SNAT and DNAT, so we don't need to worry about those. It's an easy fix and easy to get up and running.
Yeah, Tom, I think that's a great point to kind of reiterate, is that it's going to abstract away that source NAT for you using a carrier grade NAT and an Anycast IP, so that say you have a few different AWS VPCs or Azure VNets, and you've deployed resources, or your engineering teams have deployed resources within those clouds, and they've somehow used some of the same IP address schemes. This is an extremely easy way, right from the marketplace. You can just deploy these ZTNA connectors, have them drop into that VPC, and provide access by the FQD end of those resources. And so it just makes it extremely simple to streamline that access, and then apply those same security policies that we saw earlier to those applications. So, just extremely powerful, quick setup. And as long as you already have that mobile user kind of configuration done, those applications, a new engineering team can jump on, spin up a new application in a brand new VPC on a brand new AWS organization. You can have them deploy that ZTNA connector from the marketplace, and your team instantly has access. Right. So really great point to bring up.
No, that's great. Thank you both, gentlemen, for kind of explaining kind of the different components, kind of the policy and procedures. And Jeremy and Tom, you both mentioned, right? I think it's a lot of it, ease of use, ease of deployment as well, really, to get that user to be able to connect anywhere, right? Which is a huge differentiator. As we know, there are different vendors out there that provide SASE, different types of products and services. And what we always hear is it's clunky, right? Or it takes time, or the maintenance, or connections don't work. So I think what you're showing here from an architectural standpoint of how it's deployed really emphasizes the ease of use and kind of really the goal here, right? To make sure users are being connected to those applications. With that being said, it's a great transition into kind of real world examples. Tom, I'm going to start with you. Do you have a use case right now that you can tell the audience about how you've actually been able to deploy this? What maybe some of the customer challenges, how did Palo Alto Networks help, and kind of what was that outcome, the goal?
Sure. So I worked with a large hotel chain, won't mention any names, but it was they had 9,800 hotels around the world. We started off with SD-WAN. We had a deal with them, and we're currently in the process of installing 9,800 SD-WAN devices to all their hotels around the world. And then they came to us and they saw the success of this and the ease of use of that. And they came to us and said, what about our remote users and our applications? What can we do? So we started talking to them about Prisma Access. And Prisma Access, they liked it, but they said, look, we can do all this and build it ourselves. And they told us it was going to cost them between $120 to $150 million to stand this up. And we said, we could do it for a fraction of that price. And we'll give you more points of presence, as we showed on the one slide, and more access to the ability to gain access to your applications. We showed them how we could do it and when we could do it. And they were very impressed, and they ended up purchasing it. One little point that I talk about all the time is when we were doing this proof of concept with this hotel chain, we had about 200 to 300 users connected with Global Protect. Everything was going great. But then they would have a C-level meeting every month. And that C-level meeting, they would get dropped. Every one of the C-level people would get dropped. They came back and said, hey, you got to get, something's wrong with this Global Protect. Let's get rid of it, because we can't continue the work this way. Well, we said, let's keep it, but we'll put Autonomous Digital Experience Management on, turn that on, ADEM, which is our tool that can monitor and take a look at what's going on. So the next meeting, Microsoft Teams meeting they were having, same thing happened. Everybody dropped. We looked through ADEM. ADEM showed that the Microsoft Teams connection was the issue. So we pinpointed exactly what the issue was. It wasn't Prisma Access, but it was Microsoft Teams. At that point, they can turn around and go to Microsoft and say, here's your issue. It's this connection point that we're making. So that proved the value of Prisma Access and ADEM to them, and they ended up purchasing ADEM for 100 or Prisma Access for 180,000 users. So they're very happy with the product, and it's a great win for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really here to kind of see what their challenges were, kind of all the entire step in the customer journey, kind of how you were able to diagnose, but also be able to provide a solution that fit their model and fit their.
And the one thing going back to that, they were going to spend 120 to 150 million dollars building these data centers around the world, and they'd have to do the upkeep on that and upgrade them. We told them Prisma Access, Palo Alto Networks takes care of that for you behind the scenes. You don't have to worry about the upkeep or upgrading machines. We do all that for you.
That's great. That's great. Jeremy, I'm going to pivot over to you. I know you've got a lot of great experience as well with Prisma Access and the concept of SASE here at Myriad and deployment. So customer use case from you for the audience.
Yeah, definitely. Have a good one. But one thing that Tom said resonated with me a lot, which is with the ADEM. Sometimes you have users having bad experiences and you're trying to pinpoint exactly where that issue is. And, no one ever wants to say this, but sometimes, the problem can exist between the keyboard and the chair, right? So at times, just having that ability to diagnose Wi-Fi issues, at a site, pinpoint and say, hey, this is actually maybe your connection, or, kind of just diving deeper into that is just such a useful tool that I've seen, used in the real world many times to help kind of push forward the agenda, right? So another great use case that I've seen for Prisma Access is just the replacement of MPLS and older connections and lines, right? And then just revamping kind of that network and that user access. So, I had a global nonprofit who, they operate everywhere, right? And so you can imagine that having all the points of presence that Prisma Access can provide you is just extremely beneficial there. And then as they kind of replace some of their sites and move their network access around and kind of revamp how they brought in users to their applications, they've been able to use Prisma Access to help to do a lot of that. Because kind of remember, on the back end, Prisma Access not only is solving these user access, but it's a giant BGP reflector. It can add community strings to your mobile user segments, to your service connections. It can help you to route packets to different places, and it layers on that security on top of it. So I've seen a lot of companies, as they move to revamp their global network access, lean into Prisma Access, either to help with user latency and the need for speed to get to different places, or just in a ton of different ways. Again, back to those key components, there's just a lot of flexibility that the platform offers you as far as how you can connect that secure access edge. So
awesome. No, I think those use cases and real world examples talk way more, right? Because people can relate of kind of what they're going through. And so with that being said, it is time now for our Q&A. We have a couple questions that we're going to ask from our audience. And Tom, you actually kind of mentioned this a little bit. So you mentioned a little bit how Prisma Access can actually scale. You mentioned actually M&A. A lot of companies are going through M&A activity, but regardless of M&A or not, as organizations grow, how does actually Prisma Access scale with that growth?
So that's a great question. I use the example when I'm talking to customers about how, I'm on the East Coast, so a snowstorm, right? You would have 500 people working from an office. Now, all of a sudden, you have 500 people working from home. Any other platform, you would have to do some hardware upgrades or get prepared for that. Or Prisma Access, we take a look at that. We're looking at the metrics, how many people are connecting to a point of presence in Boston. So we can automatically scale. We scale behind the scenes. We scale looking at metrics of CPU users. We'll scale up, and then when the snowstorm's over, everybody scales down. And that's all done, behind the scenes. Nothing needs to be done for the customer end. And there's no extra cost for that, right? It's all included in the Prisma Access platform. That's key because, a lot of companies will go to Vegas for a meeting, right? And all of a sudden there's 10,000 users in Vegas. We can scale. It's easy to scale. No interaction from the customer at all. So it's a big scale, and we've built that on GCP and AWS, as I said.
Awesome. Jeremy, I have a question in the chat for you. because you also kind of mentioned this a little bit too in your use case, but how does Prisma Access actually compare to traditional on-prem VPN solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, with the many points of presence that Prisma Access offers you, if you were to build out all of that infrastructure to have all of those, VPN endpoints throughout your environment, then you could maybe do something similar, but probably not, right? And that's going to cost you, as Tom alluded to earlier, 120, $150 million to build out the same type of infrastructure that Prisma Access is going to offer you. So right off the bat, probably tons more points of presence than what you're used to, right? As far as where you can actually access, how you can drop a connection off, you can kind of think of it like on ramps and off ramps to where you can cut in, where your users are located, and where you can drop them off. And to kind of mention the auto scaling part that Tom brought up, as far as a traditional VPN, maybe you have a set firewall at that location. You can onboard so many people, or you have a concentrator that's kind of routing you to where you need to go, right? This automatically gets scale. Say you have 10,000 users who are going to a conference in Vegas. This will scale automatically. You can add additional mobile user access locations as needed. So say you suddenly spin up a new office somewhere, you don't have to deploy that infrastructure there. You don't have to access that specific on-premise gateway portal, wherever that is, right? And so that kind of flexibility, one, provides you just a lot of flexibility with how and where you can build out your networks in case they're maybe more ephemeral in nature, but also just the speed, right? Because again, man, once you jump onto one of those mobile user connection points and you're routing to either a remote network location or to a service connection, at that point, once you get to a compute location, it's only a maximum of 4 hops, right, to get you to where you need to go. So that's very quick, especially over the Prisma Access backbone. If you're doing a data center interconnect, you have some high bandwidth applications. That's even better, right? So just a lot of flexibility with the points of presence and the speed, right? I think those are some of the biggest differentiators. And to top it off, on top of that, we should add in, you get all the add-ons that you can layer on top of that too, right? So traditional VPNs aren't going to have the SaaS security, the enterprise DLP, ADEM. These are features that, as you find a need for them, they're easy to just kind of pop and add on after the fact.
Perfect. Actually, you just mentioned right there a couple of different add-ons. And so to tease the audience just a little bit, our next section is going to be around specifically dedicated to enterprise browser and browser security in general. Tom, I don't know if you want to speak just super highly to tease the audience a little bit about how does that play into the whole world of SASE?
Sure. I mean, we look at what we do, 85% of our work is done through a browser. And today, it's not secured, right? The main objective of a Google or any browser is to collect your data and sell that to advertisers. So when you have an enterprise browser, that's all cut out, right? It's just your work that you're doing from a SaaS application and securing it with a DLP and different security tools from Palo Alto Networks. It's a great tool. We purchased the company about a year ago. And I think we're going to have one of our top, Brian Walsh, who's going to talk about the enterprise browser, and he does a great job at that. So it's going to be a great session.
Perfect. No, I appreciate you going over that high level. Last question for you guys. For people that are listening today, for companies that are maybe struggling to implement SASE or looking for new innovative ways, how can they find more resources for both of you guys?
So I'll start, Jeremy, if you don't mind. PaloAltoNetworks.com/SASE. If you go to that website, it's everything SASE that we offer. We're actually doing what we call a SASE Converge next week. Is a free event. It's going to be a couple hours just talking about SASE with our experts from our company. So I strongly suggest anybody that needs to learn more about SASE go there as well.
I appreciate that, Tom. And for Mirror 360, please reach out to me, reach out to your account executive if you have one. If you haven't heard of us, reach out to us on the LinkedIn on our main page. Please get in touch with us. We want to talk to you about your environment, about how you're utilizing these tools, and how we can help. So.
Perfect. No, again, thank you both. You were both our industry experts, especially when it comes to this. I think this was super insightful for our audience, not just to uncover what SASE means for different organizations, but really going through what are the key components, how does Palo Alto Networks and Myriad help organizations overcome some of these challenges and have success, and lastly, giving use cases, right? I think, again, that kind of transcends almost everything, right? When people can actually relate to the stories and hear how organizations were able to deploy and effectively optimize and become efficient in the SASE deployment, it speaks volumes. So again, Jeremy, Tom, thank you both so much for joining today and giving the audience your knowledge and your wisdom. And for everybody else, again, I want to thank you. We want to thank you on behalf of Palo Alto Networks and Myriad 360 for joining today's session. If you enjoyed today's sessions, please sure to check out and like our follow pages from Palo Alto Networks and Myriad 360 about the innovations, how we're shaping the world, and how we can help your organizations stay ahead and stay ready. Again, Jeremy, Tom, thank you both so much. And for the rest of the audience, thank you and have a great rest of the day.